Duke fans, hello and welcome to episode 152 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. We are coming to you real early. It is Sunday, March 10th. We're recording.
Daylight savings time sucks. Daylight savings time. Oh.
We had to spring forward into the future an hour just to bring you this podcast. Because of that, I'm here. I'm the host this week, Donald Wine, recording from DC, which is on the East Coast. Jason is here in Atlanta. Jason, how's it going?
Wow, it was a bad week for Duke. That's how it's going. Can we wrap it up?
That's about right.
Let's just wrap it up. It was a bad week. Let's wrap it up.
All right, that was episode 151, 152. It's just the two of us this week. Sam is on vacation somewhere with Section 5 around the world somewhere.
He's in Zurich right now.
He's
Sam
in Zurich.
He's wandering the streets of Zurich, wondering what to do. And Donald, you had a great recommendation, didn't you?
Yes, I've actually been to Zurich, and the FIFA museum is there, which is actually kind of cool. You get to see all the jerseys for all 200 teams, and there's an interactive part. It only takes him about hours, so I recommended that to him. We'll see if he actually does it.
Now, for the FIFA museum, your admission price, what percentage of that goes to bribes and what percentage goes to the museum?
So basically, the interactive part, you only pay I think $25. But as you go through, they start collecting money from you ever so slightly here, and here. So you end up paying $85 by the end of it because of bribes.
There you go. That's FIFA.
But you know what? That's FIFA. We could talk all day about FIFA, but you know what? Let's talk about some basketball that was played this week, apparently. We're going to start off with the game that occurred last night. Duke went to Chapel Hill for a rematch against the North Carolina Tar Heels, and we lost 79-70. Also included in that, and I'm going to start with this, Jason, because there's a lot we can unpack, but I'm going to start with the injury to Marquise Bolden about 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the game. He came down awkwardly on his left knee, trying to block a shot, landed on the basketball stanchion, got called for a foul, even though he did secure a block, in my opinion, but had to be helped off the court, did not return to the game. He returned to the bench in the second half, but did not play. Jason, can we have a game where nobody gets hurt? Or is this something that we're just going to have to deal with where somebody, including a starter, gets hurt every single game?
I saw a fabulous stat that is very indicative of what Duke's season has been prior to the start of this game. And this is a stat that will clearly continue for at least a couple more weeks, because I expect Marquise Bolden, if he's able to come back this year, it will be into the NCAA tournament, perhaps, assuming Duke gets this far, the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. Because I think he's got something similar to what Zion had, which is, a knee injury that's probably a couple weeks or so. Here's the stat, though. In 18 ACC games, Duke has had their healthy starting five. I'm not just talking healthy guys on the bench. Starting five. Mm-hmm. Duke's starting five has only been available for half the games.
Yep.
I mean, that's all you need to know about this season. We've seen, Cam Reddish missed a game. Trey Jones missed a few games. And of course, we've had the situation with Zion Williamson now. And it's clearly affected Duke's ability to be all we can be. The remarkable thing is that we're still pretty clearly one of the top teams in the country. And all signs are pointing to Zion Williamson returning next week for the ACC tournament. Coach K has said that's what he expects to happen. Coach K even said after the game that Zion would be a full participant in practice starting on Monday this week. So assuming there's no setback, oh my God, fingers crossed that there's no setback, I think we get him back. Will we miss Marquise Bolden? Yes, I think Bolden, has shown at times this year that he's an excellent rim protector. He's done a pretty decent job of rebounding. He's a valuable part of the team. He's not Zion Williamson. And I think Javin DeLaurier can make up for a lot of what Marquise Bolden does if we're without Marquise for the ACC tournament. The key, of course, is getting Zion back, because as we've seen repeatedly, without Zion on the floor, Duke just doesn't have enough options on offense, and we aren't as aggressive on defense. And I mean, that was on full display against Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I want to say this when Marquise went down, I was at the Duke DC watch party, and everyone just basically was just yelling, "Oh, not again!" Because this, like you said, this happens every single game. It seems like, but I do want to credit the team for their resilience because I thought after Marquise went down for the rest of the first half, they played with a lot of heart and tenacity to have a 2-point lead at halftime because those sort of things they like we've said a lot of times on this podcast, they shell shock you. And the team just doesn't know how to react to that. And most of the losses that we've had started as a result of somebody getting hurt and us having to throw our game plan out of the window. So I do want to credit the team for their resiliency. But in the second half, the adjustments made by UNC, especially inside, were really what killed us. And then they also got hot from outside. We just couldn't match that. They were 6 for 8 from 3 to start the second half, and it seemed like every shot they were shooting went in. I think in the end, our field goal percentage, which is terrible, 34% for the game from the floor. That's 2-pointers and 3-pointers. So when we're not hitting our 2-pointers, I know our 3-pointers, we hit 8 of 32, which is kind of a decent number for us. But if we're not hitting our
wait, it's 25%. I mean, yeah, it's not.
I'm talking in numbers. It like hitting 8 threes for us is a pretty, that's kind of standard for what we're doing this year.
Yeah, although I mean, statistically, the difference in this game, if you look at the stats, you can go across the board. The rebounding battle was fairly similar. Neither team turned the ball over very much. Neither team shot like lights out. Great. I mean, we hit 34%. Carolina hits 40%. The difference in the game was 1 from 3, and Carolina was 12 of 31. They took 1 less 3-pointer and hit 4 more 3-pointers. They win by 9, and they outscored us by 12 at the 3-point line. It's kind of hard not to go, okay, well, that's where the difference in the game was. Let me hone in on one section of the game. It started at the 12-minute mark. The game was tied at 50. And Carolina would go on to outscore Duke 22-10 over the next 5 minutes to take control of the game. And of those 22 points, Kobe White either scored or assisted on 19 of the 22 points. The only points that he didn't directly cause was 1 rebound basket, and Garrison Brooks got fouled and hit 1 out of 2. And so basically, other than that, over a span of 5 minutes, Kobe White just absolutely went on a crazy hot run. He is. We talked last game about what a great job Trey Jones did controlling Kobe White, and this game, not as much. I mean, when Kobe White feels it, he is one of the best. He may be the best point guard in the country when he's on, and when he's, I guess he's not better than Jay Morant at Murray State. So sorry, I'll put that aside. But he's a heck of a player, and really had an amazing second half for Carolina. And I think more than anything else, he's the reason they won. Hey, did you see that move he had? He had one layup where he juked Trey and then went behind his back to leave RJ like jaw on the floor, like, where'd he go? And then he did a spin move at the end past Cam Reddish for a layup. I mean, it was one of the finest one-on 3 plays you'll see any guard in college basketball make this year. To juke Trey Jones, leave RJ, like I said, absolutely flat-footed, and then spin past Cam Reddish. Damn, I mean, that kid. Hats off to Kobe White. He played really fabulous.
Yeah, and that really paced their team, like you said, especially during that stretch of the second half. When he was on, the whole team was lighting up. You had Kenny Williams doing stuff that Kenny Williams is not supposed to do, and was causing a lot of plays to happen. And that momentum is something that they fed off of, and they fed off that energy from the crowd that they had too. Which was pretty loud at times.
The Kenny Williams defense. So Kenny Williams is a great defender, and Jay Billis was. I'm not going to describe what Jay Billis was doing because it would require me to talk about some bad words. But Jay Willis was making love to Kenny Williams' defense. Let's just put it that way. Because Kenny Williams drew 3 charging calls on RJ Barrett. And those were real difference makers in the game.
Yep.
But did you notice Seth Davis, who is a Duke graduate, but Seth Davis, like Jay Billis, like Jay Williams, like a lot of Duke guys who get into the media, Seth Davis does not become a Duke homer. If you listen to Seth Davis talk on television, he's on CBS. If you watch his Twitter feed, he is not a Duke homer. But Seth Davis during this game actually tweeted, as usual, Duke is getting hosed by the refs.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't. Again, I think Seth Davis is very objective. Jay Billis thought that Kenny Williams was playing incredible defense. I thought of Kenny Williams' 3 charging calls, at least 2 of them were beyond questionable. I thought
yeah.
they were terrible calls.
Yeah.
He was clearly moving. I understand when you're facing the defender, you don't have to be holding still, but he moved into the path of where RJ Barrett was going.
And
he
it was
moved
dropping at the same time.
Yeah, and yeah, his shoulders were square to RJ, and props for that. But that's not a charge. It's just not a charge. You cannot move into the path of the offensive guy. That's not the way the rule is written.
It was 2 words. 2 words for that. TV Teddy.
Yeah. I thought the officiating in this game was terrible, and I'll tell you something. It wasn't just those charging calls. And folks, if you listen to this podcast, we do not complain about the refs a lot. I don't come on here and say the refs hosed Duke. I really don't. So the fact that I'm going to say it now, I hope will carry some weight. I thought they allowed the teams to play too much. They weren't calling fouls. They weren't calling contact fouls on guys driving to the basket and putting up shots. Carolina is a more physical team than Duke, especially when we don't have Zion Williamson. Carolina is a much deeper team than Duke, especially when we're missing 2 starters and the way our bench has struggled mightily this season. So playing a deeper game, playing a more physical game, it favors Carolina in a very big way when the referees sort of go, I'm just going to put this whistle in my pocket and not blow it, except for when RJ Barrett is charging. So, and I think that had a big impact.
So when during the game last night, I was minding the DBR Twitter at DBR SBN for those of you who want to follow, and I mentioned at a certain point when RJ picked up his 4th foul that Teddy Valentine is inserting himself into the game in a way that no one should like. And it's for the reasons you just mentioned, because everyone became timid, and especially RJ. There was a couple of drives after that where he could go all the way to the rim, but because someone was standing underneath the basket, he stopped short because he knew he had 4 fouls, and he knew that they had been calling that all game long, no matter where he was on the floor. And he didn't want to go and barrel into somebody, even if they were standing inside the cylinder. So that made him timid. And when he did that, there was a couple of wide open layups that he could have had, or even dunks, that he stopped short and did like an 8-footer and rimmed that out. So, and UNC's going the other way. That sort of psyche really, took RJ out of the game late because he couldn't be his full self. And when you're thinking about, refs, we, like you said, we don't talk about the refs a lot, but when the refs make it so that you can't play your game, that is going to break you down more than any crowd ever will.
Well, and RJ had very little help this game in the second half, especially. I mean, Duke shot just 23% after halftime, just 23% in the second half. And Cam Reddish, I want to talk about Cam for a moment. I thought he was incredibly assertive in this game. Mm-hmm. And he was great in the first half. He had like either 17 or 19. I think it was 17 in the first half.
Points. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge half. And that's why Duke had the lead at halftime. I mean, Cam scored almost half of our first half points, but then he only has 6 points in the second half. And I think you saw Duke's lack of depth come into play in this game. We ran out of gas late in the half. Cam especially, I think, was tired. And look, he's had trouble finishing through contact all season long. He needs to get stronger, both in terms of his stamina and in terms of his ability to absorb contact and finish through contact. It's a bummer that we won't really get to watch him develop because he'll move on to the next level. He'll move on to the NBA after this season. Of course he will. He's going to be, a top 5, top 7 pick in the draft, and that's great for him. But it was a bummer to see sort of a lackluster second half after how great he was in the first half. But I'll say this: if we get this assertive and confident Cam Reddish when Zion Williamson is back, Duke will cut down 3 more nets. We will cut down the nets at the ACC tournament. We will cut down the nets at the East Regional tournament. Yes, we will win the ACC and get the East Regional, and we will cut down the nets at the NCAA tournament. I'm putting that out there. If you get an assertive and confident Cam Reddish, the kind of Cam Reddish that's capable of putting up 20 points, then Duke will cut down 3 more sets of nets this season. Period. End of story.
Okay, we're going to put that game out of the way, and we're going to talk about Wake Forest. But before I do, I would be remiss if we did not mention our lovely sponsors and to thank them for their support of the podcast. First off, Bird Campbell, PA, those boys down in Florida and Texas with all your business legal needs. Birdcampbell.com. Bird Campbell means business. And also GTHCGTH.com for all of your Go to Hell Carolina gear. We're going to need that stuff, even though we seem to be talking about losses. UNC, go to hell, Carolina, go to hell, and you can get all your apparel at gthcgth.com. Okay, Jason, let's talk about the Wake Forest game. This was Tuesday night, and
do we have to?
We're going to talk about it because we talk about everything on this podcast, apparently. But, inexplicably, with 16 minutes and 20 seconds left in the game, Wake was up 49-39. Duke eventually stormed back and then almost inexplicably let Wake win. In the end, literally a jumper from 8 feet rimmed out, and it was 71-70. Duke over Wake Forest. It was senior night. There was a lot of buzz. It was the last game in Cameron. We did not have Zion, obviously, for this game, but what else happened in this game that was a struggle?
Well, so the first thing is the last second shot that came about as close as you can to falling and not falling. I want to point out, and this is important to note, the referees don't go back and review a shot that misses to see if it would have been good if it had gone in. That's
really good for us.
No. They go, hey, let's check, because I looked at the replays and he did not get the shot off in time. There are photos out there on the internet, folks. If you don't believe me, you can go look and find these photos that show that the ball was clearly still on the player's fingertips. I don't even remember who was it that took that shot for Wake. It was
I didn't see. I was watching that game on my phone, so it was hard to see.
I forget who it was that took that rebound shot, but he didn't get it off in time. So it wouldn't have counted if it had gone in anyway. But I mean, you have to start by tipping the cap to Wake Forest. They played a good game. One of their better games for sure. They were especially effective on the boards. They hung right with Duke on the boards, which is a big deal for Wake Forest. They didn't turn the ball over. Usually Wake has trouble holding on the ball. They only had 9 turnovers. And look, this has been one of the hallmarks of the non-Zion Williamson Duke basketball this season. Without Zion, we don't get steals. We only had 3 steals against Wake. We don't block as many shots. We had 7 block shots in this game. So we blocked some shots against Wake, but for the most part, we don't get steals. We don't block as many shots. But the big thing is we really don't turn the other team over nearly as much. And Wake only had 9 turnovers against Duke. So it allowed them to be reasonably efficient. And they hit some key shots at times. And Duke it felt like we were sleepwalking. We honestly, we didn't really deserve to win. I don't know how to say it other than that. I mean, Cam Reddish picked up 3 really bad charging calls. I complained about the refs earlier. I actually thought Cam's charging calls in this game were, right on target. The referees were correct. When a guy is standing still underneath the basket, out of the restricted circle, and you run into him, that's a charge. and Cam picked up 3 of those. in the first half. And it meant that, I talked about how assertive Cam was against UNC. Well, he was the opposite against Wake Forest. And I'm not throwing Cam Reddish under the bus. I get that he's, a freshman, and the adjustment to the physicality of college ball has not been easy for him. And he has good games and he has poor games. And against Wake Forest, he had a poor game. He's not going to play great every time. And without Zion and with Cam not playing great, it meant that RJ Barrett, took almost half of Duke's shots. I mean, there was no one else really to shoulder the load. So, RJ went out there and kept on firing. We didn't hit our threes as usual, but RJ still picked up 28 points. And the weird thing was the free throw shooting. RJ Barrett's been a fairly decent free throw shooter for Duke this year, but he was just 6 of 14 at the free throw line. So that's one of the things that allowed Wake Forest to stay close. And this was just it was not a game that is memorable. It's not a game I feel like talking about all that much because Duke we didn't play all that well. The frustrating thing this whole season, to some extent, has been the supporting cast and their ups and downs. God, the Alex O'Connells, the Jack Whites, the Javin DeLauriers, Marquise Bolden, for that matter, who's been the starter most of the season. Each one of them has had games, maybe even a stretch of 2 or 3 games where they play really well, but they've also had maddening stretches of games where they really haven't played well. None of them have been at all consistent on offense, and I know that they are role players. I know that they're not guys who have the skill set to carry a team, to be the main offensive force. But God, it's so frustrating that among those 4 guys, we can't at least have one of them playing fairly consistently. They've been so up and down. I mean, I can't tell from game to game which one of them is going to play well and which ones are not going to play well. I mean, against Carolina, none of them really played well. I mean, Jack and Javin, they rebounded well. And they protected the rim, I guess, a little bit, but neither one of them. Javin's not going to do anything on offense. He's going to get dunks when guys feed him the ball under the basket wide open. It's been frustrating, and so the Wake Forest was a game. Like I said, Cam Reddish was struggling. RJ Barrett couldn't hit his free throws, and no one else really stepped up all that much. Trey Jones ended up with 13 points. Trey had a good game, 13 points and eight rebounds. But there wasn't enough from everyone else in this game against Wake Forest, and as a result, we almost lost what could have been that would have been a pretty disastrous loss. I'd be getting concerned about Duke's seeding if we'd managed to lose that game, but we didn't. We held on. I don't know. There's not much I can say about it. We didn't play well, and I want to get Zion Williamson back.
Yeah. I will say this, looking at this game and also, when you're looking at UNC, the field goal percentage that we have is really the cause for concern when Zion's not in the lineup. I mean, we were at 41% for the game against Wake, 34% against UNC. And when we're talking about field goal percentage, we want that number to be closer to, over 50, but if not close to 50. Because you want to be making half of your shots. If you're making half your shots with the number of shots that we take, that's why we score so many points. And also on top of all that, you get to the line, you have more opportunities for free throws, and hopefully you try to make them. Against Wake, we didn't. We were 16 for 26, but you want that number to be closer to 70, 75%. For this team to really be successful, they have to be more efficient with the basketball and take shots that they know will go in. When we're taking 22 threes, knowing that we're only going to get about 30% of them in, that's not efficient basketball. And with Zion in the game, at least with Zion, he's going to be able to go right into the lane and get to the rack and have easy buckets, or go to the free throw line where he has a chance to make free throws. So we want to have those type of things. And in the ACC tournament, which we'll talk about in just a second, we want to have those games where we're shooting 50% from the floor, because if we're shooting 50% from the floor, all these other things are kind of going to fall into place. It may be where we don't need to have, 10 threes, because we're not, that's something that we really can't rely on this year. But if we shoot 50%, then teams are going to have a really hard time staying with us, even if they're shooting all threes. And I think that is the key. If we can become back to the efficient team that we were earlier in the season, this team will be okay. This episode of the DBR Podcast is brought to you by those fine gentlemen at Bird Campbell, PA, your Duke-centric law firm with law offices in Florida and Texas. If you or anyone you know are in search of legal needs in the business world, you need to call those boys from Bird Campbell, PA. Hit them up on their website, birdcampbell.com. That is BYRDCAMPBELL.com. Bird Campbell means business. Okay, fans, we are putting this past week out of our minds because the postseason is here. That is right. We will begin on Thursday with the ACC tournament down in Charlotte. We have drawn the third seed, which means we will get either Syracuse or the winner of Boston College and Pittsburgh on Thursday night. Game time roughly 9 to 9:30, but you know how these things work with TV. It'll probably be closer to 10 o'clock. But we now have a chance to win an ACC championship, and we'll have Zion back. Coach K has reported that and said after the game last night that Zion will be full practice on Monday and ready to go by the start of the ACC tournament, at least for Duke. Duke has earned the double bye, being the third seed. The tournament actually begins on Tuesday. So, Jason, we have Zion back. We know where we are. It lines up where we could again see UNC in the semifinal if we get that far. How do we win this ACC championship?
I mean, if Duke is the team that we were before Zion got hurt, we're going to win the ACC tournament. We can stop the discussion there if you want. There's no question about that. The Duke team that beat Virginia twice, the Duke team that had Zion Williamson and was at full health, was the best team in the country. There's no one who disputes that. In fact, if you look at the advanced metrics, that Duke team was one of the best teams we've seen in college basketball in the past 2 decades. It was like, top 2, top 3 in all of college basketball over the past couple decades. So getting Zion back and having him hopefully play close to the way he used to play means so much for this team in terms of having options on the floor, on offense, and being a terrifying force again on defense. And I've said it several times in this podcast. I think we're missing Zion as much at the defensive end as we are at the offensive end. This Duke team was one of the top 3, top 5 teams in the country on both offense and defense when we had Zion. And it was the combination of those two things, and especially the way we were able to turn teams over, protect the rim, and terrify teams on defense that we're not able to do without him. I've said it before, he has a gravity. The game is forced to feel his presence on the floor, and we've missed him. Talking about the ACC bracket, I actually like the way it shapes up for us, because the Carolina game, the only thing that Carolina game did was it meant one team would be, would face the winner of the Louisville, Georgia Tech, Notre Dame game, and the other team would face the winner of the Syracuse, Boston College, Pitt game. So it's basically, do you want Louisville or do you want Syracuse? And if you ask me that, having nothing to do with what seed you get, are you the number 2 or number 3 seed? Do you want Louisville or do you want Syracuse? I would take Syracuse all day. Louisville, we've seen, is a good team. Louisville played a full-strength Duke Blue Devils and had us on the ropes, had us dead to rights, 99.9% chance we were losing that game. We all know what happened, but that's a good Louisville team. They just played Virginia at Virginia, neck and neck. I mean, Louisville had every chance to win that Virginia game yesterday against Virginia. So this is a very, very good Louisville team. It's a team that struggled to close out games, but they're a quality team. So I am very happy to get Syracuse. I actually think, I mean, even though Syracuse has given Duke some trouble this year because they've happened to get us at times when injuries have really been bothering us. I like Duke against Syracuse a lot more than I like us against Louisville. So I think, and after that game, assuming you win, you get the rematch with Carolina. Carolina having to beat this Duke team 3 times in a row, I think, is going to be hard to see, and I can't wait for them to finally face Zion Williamson. I don't think they have. We said in the pregame before the first game, Carolina doesn't have an answer for Zion Williamson. There are very few teams that do, and I am eager to see Zion get a chance to play the Tar Heels. In terms of the rest of the bracket, watch that NC State Clemson game that is at noon on Wednesday. The pundits out there would tell you that the team that wins that game will make the NCAA tournament. The team that loses that game is going to be biting their fingers and very, very nervous and looking at the bubble. I actually think they both will probably end up making it. It's not a strong bubble this year. There aren't a lot of teams out there that have really put up resumes that you go, oh, that team deserves to be in the tournament. So I think the ACC is getting 9, but certainly the winner of that NC State Clemson game is going to feel a lot better about their chances. And I actually think there may even be a little bit of an argument that Syracuse might be a little bit on the bubble. They didn't close the season super strong. Their net rating, the NCAA has this new metric, the net. Yeah. Syracuse is 46 in the net, which is not great. I mean, you'd like to be above 40 in terms of making the NCAA tournament. By the way, NC State and Clemson are both in the 2. Clemson is 35. At the moment we're recording. So I actually think NC State and Clemson, even though their ACC record was worse than Syracuse, may be in slightly better shape than Syracuse in terms of making the tournament. But those are the teams that sort of need to perform well in the ACC, and Syracuse, unfortunately, will have the task of performing well first against Boston College or Pitt, but then against Duke. And Virginia is almost certainly going to come out of the top half of the bracket. If you ask me for a surprise team from the top half of the bracket, I'm going to go with Virginia Tech. I think they have a chance to beat Florida State, a decent chance, and I think they'll have a chance to perhaps beat Virginia as well. But I think it's pretty likely Virginia is going to come out of the top half. Virginia has lost to exactly 0 teams not named Duke this year. So I'm looking forward to another Duke-Virginia matchup in the ACC championship.
Yeah, so when we're talking about this ACC tournament, we're obviously thinking about the NCAA tournament in this. And when you look at the 1 seed line and the 2 seed line, we're looking at 3 teams, and we're looking at Duke, Virginia, and UNC, the top 3 teams in the conference. And when it comes to that, I personally think that the winner of the ACC tournament, if it's one of those 3 teams, that team will get the East in the 1 seed and be in DC. But also on top of that, they would also get Columbia, South Carolina as the first and second round pod. That is what all 3 of these teams are shooting for. And for Duke in this ACC tournament, it's a chance where we can say, okay, committee, you've had your fun, and now we have the best team in basketball. Our best player is back, and we're going to see what Duke can play like in a NCAA type setting. And when that happens, we want to see how explosive Duke can be, just like they were early in the season when really nobody, save Gonzaga, like the 4th, 5th game of the season, could stop us. So I think that is what we're looking for in this ACC tournament. Now, for this bracket, how it's set up, I do like that. I think I kind of want to push back on Syracuse being in the bubble. Right now, Lenardi has them as a 9 seed. And I think when you're a 9 seed, that means you're safely in. But yes, they probably shouldn't lose to Boston College or Pittsburgh. But I think if they do beat whoever comes out of there, we have a really good chance, or they have a pretty good chance of making the tournament easily and not being in one of those last few spots given out. But I do think NC State has a chance. Right now, they're one of the last 4 in, according to Lenardi. NC State, Clemson, and even Boston College, while we're looking at it, and Georgia Tech, have a chance to, get a couple of wins and really solidify their place in the NCAA tournament. Because the great thing about the ACC for these teams, every night, if you're beating somebody, you're beating a really, really good team. So they have a chance to really make up some ground and really just take the decision out of the committee's hands and say, this is a team that deserves to be in the NCAA tournament.
Donald, I love you, man. Georgia Tech and BC ain't getting in. They could. They could have a couple upsets. I mean, Georgia Tech and BC could upset Duke and Carolina and make the ACC semis. They could even make the ACC finals. I don't think either one of those teams. They're both ranked outside the top 100 in the net rankings. Georgia Tech's 117. Boston College is 127. These teams are not going to the NCAA tournament. I mean, unless they win the ACC, but Georgia Tech and BC are not winning the ACC.
Let's hope not, because that would really put a monkey wrench in our plans, huh?
Yeah. But wait. So you talked about the NCAA tournament. There is more and more talk. Look, I'm the one who started this a week ago, and I said the ACC could get 3 number 1 seeds, and I think a lot of people would have been like, "What, really?" There's more and more talk that the ACC could get 3 number 1 seeds. A lot because you discount what has happened to Duke the past 4 games, 5 games, sorry, of Zion Williamson being out. You put a huge discount on those games. But the other thing that's happened is teams that sort of were making the play. Look, Gonzaga is a number 1. Virginia is a number 1. I think those 2 things are givens at this point.
It's just a matter of where. Like Gonzaga probably has the West. We're really talking about the Midwest, South, and East.
Right. So those 2 teams are number 1 seeds. The other teams that sort of be contenders alongside Duke and Carolina for number 1 seeds, for the most part, are doing us favors by losing games. I mean, Tennessee lost. And I think there's, Tennessee may be out of the play, out of running for a number 1 seed. Kentucky is still very much in the running, but I think Kentucky probably needs to win the SEC tournament to solidify it. Michigan just lost to Michigan State. Last week, Michigan State lost a game. I'm not sure that anyone from the Big Ten is getting a number 1 seed. The only, I guess, maybe if Michigan State wins the Big Ten tournament, maybe. But I don't know. Even that, I think, could be difficult. Michigan State swept Michigan, so I think Michigan is out. And if you ask me, I'm just not sure there are that many contenders other than Duke and UNC and Kentucky. So if Kentucky doesn't win the SEC, right now, in my opinion, the default is that Duke and UNC, along with Virginia and Gonzaga, are the number 1s. I just think that's the way that it looks right now.
I think so too. They haven't released any updated projections or anything like that with regards to bracketology, but I think you're right. I think, like I said, I think the winner of those 3, whoever wins the ACC tournament, will get the East.
I agree.
I think the one who gets the second furthest, I think after that they'll review records and kind of head to head, because they've all played each other, to see who gets the South. And that's where it's going to be interesting, because you have Kentucky vying for that South because they want to be in Louisville, because and then you also have UNC, who has beaten us twice. Duke has beaten Virginia twice. Virginia has beaten UNC once. And so it's going to be basically about what team do they think is better. And there's a couple of clear avenues they could go. But yeah, I think if Kentucky doesn't win the SEC championship, if Michigan State doesn't win the Big Ten championship, then I think it really just does set the pace for Duke, UNC, and Virginia to claim those other 3 number 1 seeds, and it'll just be a matter of where they go.
Yeah, and I think that what you're probably going to see is the loser of the Duke UNC game goes to the Midwest, probably with perhaps as a number 2 seed to Kentucky number 1, but perhaps with Kentucky as the number 2 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other possibility is that that whoever wins the Big Ten, Michigan State, or perhaps even Purdue, is the number 2 out there in the Midwest. and then the loser of the ACC finals is going to be the number one in the South, whether that's Virginia, whether that's Duke, whether that's North Carolina, and we're getting too far into the weeds of bracketology. We'll know everything
in like a week. Yeah.
Yeah, in a week. But it's going to be, another fun, exciting ACC tournament. Although the ACC feels pretty top heavy. Usually I'm able to look at the bracket and you can spot a lot of potential upsets. I don't know. I just don't see a lot of upsets out there because the top three in the ACC have been so dominant. Duke, UNC, and Virginia, other than Duke losing inexplicably to Syracuse when, we had multiple guys hurt. It's like the only games that Duke, UNC, and Virginia have lost have been games against each other for the most part. So those three teams are making the semifinals. And then I think Florida State and Virginia Tech have set themselves apart from most of the rest of the conference as well. So it'll be an exciting tournament. I don't know that there's going to be a lot of upsets. That's just sort of the way it feels to me.
I do think it will be easily the best conference tournament on TV this week.
Of course. It'll be the one I'm watching, that's for sure.
Damn straight. The DBR Podcast is brought to you by GTHCGTH.com. And as any Duke fan knows, this stands for Go to Hell, Carolina, Go to Hell. And it is the go-to website for hats, t-shirts, and other apparel that shows off your true feelings for those cheaters 12 miles down the road. We should probably add that this entire thing is a brainchild of one of the most beloved Blue Devils of all time, Kenny Dennard, a man who has fought in the trenches against those hellbound Tar Heels. So, do Kenny a favor and check out GTHCGTH.com. We know you will see something you like. He's even added a few more items for you to scream, Go to Hell, Carolina, Go to Hell with. Okay, Jason, as usual, we will wrap up with our player of the week and our parting shots. First, give me who you got for player of the week.
RJ Barrett. I mean, I'm not sure there's anyone else who's Zion Williamson out. RJ Barrett has had to shoulder the offensive load. He does the most creating. He's picking up more and more assists. This week he had 26 points against Carolina, 12 rebounds, 4 assists. I mean, wow. That's just a huge line. Against Wake Forest, he was our only offense. He had 28 points against Wake, 5 rebounds, 4 assists again, led the team in assists against Wake Forest. There's no other candidate I can think of other than RJ Barrett.
Okay, yeah, I'm doing that as well because, like you said, it's player of the week. And even though I thought Cam Reddish had a really good game for most of the first half and some of the second half against UNC, RJ had a great week against Wake and UNC. So mine is going to RJ Barrett. All right, it's parting shots time. And Jason, what do you got for me?
So this past week was the ACC women's tournament, and the Duke women lost in the second round. They finished the season 15-15. I want to repeat that if you haven't been paying attention. The Duke women's basketball team went 15-15. Donald, do you know the last time the Duke women did not finish the season above 500? By the way, Duke will not be playing in any postseason this year. We won't go to the NIT. We won't go to the NCAA tournament. 15-15, we're done. The season's over. Donald, when do you think was the last time the Duke women didn't win more than half of their games?
I'm going to guess 1993.
Did you look that up?
No, I didn't.
Come on. How'd you know that? It was 1993.
Hey, it's a good guess, huh? Yeah.
At 26 years ago, 1993. I wish Sam was on the podcast right now because I can bet Sam doesn't remember anything that happened in 1993. He was what, like 3 years old, 4 years old,
Probably,
something like that?
Yeah.
1993, 26 years. Here's some perspective for you. The last time Duke wasn't better than 500 in hoops, Bill Clinton had just taken the oath of office. We had just begun the first Clinton administration.
That's whack.
What has happened to Duke women's hoops is just sad.
And and funny thing is inexplicably they have beaten UNC twice.
Yeah, but you know what? And yes, I'm glad that Coach McCallie managed to beat UNC twice, but that's not enough. Duke has now lost 53 games over the past seasons under Coach McCallie. 53 games in 5 seasons. You know, the final 5 years of Gail Gostencourse, we lost 17 total games. I mean, Duke has the facilities, has the reputation, has all the recruiting ability to be a top 10 program in women's hoops pretty much every year. And at one time, Joanne McCallie was bringing in elite recruits all the time. She brought in McDonald's All-Americans. Well, for the second straight season, we're not bringing in a single recruit that ESPN ranks among the top 50 in the country. Amazingly, I don't know how, but amazingly, at the start of the 2017 season, Kevin White gave Joanne McCallie a 4-year contract extension. So she will be Duke's head coach until 2021, unless some booster wants to pony up, millions of dollars to get rid of her, which seems highly, highly unlikely. And so I'm afraid if you look at what's been happening in the program over the past 5 years or so, Duke will continue to waddle along as one of the bottom half of the ACC, far, far, far worse than the Duke women should be for 2 more seasons. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, but I think we have to endure 2 more seasons of Joanne McCallie leading the Duke basketball program. And I suspect then she will be gone and Duke will move on. And hopefully we'll get back to what we were for a long time, a team that perennially, making Sweet 16, Elite Eights, Final Fours, playing for national titles in the top 10 all the time. I just think it's sad that Duke was 15-15 this season. And looking at the past several seasons, this wasn't like some huge, huge aberration. This is what it looks like Duke is going to be going forward for the next couple seasons under Joanne McCallie. I'm sorry, I don't want to throw a coach under the bus like that. We are Duke fans. We want Duke to succeed, but Joanne McCallie is not getting the job done.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. And it's funny because that you mentioned women's basketball, because my parting shot also deals with women's basketball and deals with a member of the Duke family, Monique Curry. You guys remember Monique Curry? She was the bomb in college, and also has had a really, really great career in the WNBA. Well, recently, about a week or two ago, she announced her retirement from the WNBA to begin a career at Nike. I'm not sure what she's doing at Nike, but a 12-year career that started in Charlotte and ended right here in DC with the Washington Mystics, where she's from. She went to school here in DC before going to Duke. So congratulations to Mo on a ridiculously awesome career. It was fun to watch her play on TV. She's one of the, and even at Duke, she was one of the best players that Duke has ever had, in my opinion, in the women's program. She does not have her number retired, but if she had, I would definitely argue that she could state a case to have her number retired at Duke. But great career for Mo Curry, and just want to give her a little shout out as she begins her next career with Nike, doing something that would probably be just as awesome as she is. So congrats, Mo, on the achievements, on the career, and best of luck on the next chapter of your career. And that is going to do it for episode 152 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. Reminder, folks, you can check us out on iTunes. You can check us out on Google Play, Stitcher Radio, or SoundCloud. Please subscribe. Leave us some reviews. It makes us feel nice and warm. Guys, get ready. Zion's coming back. Next week is going to be our selection show appearance. We are going to do stuff probably just after, at some point after the selection show next Sunday, to see where Duke is going and what our road to a national championship could look like. So for now, for Sam, who is off yonder in Europe, for Jason in Atlanta, I am Donald here in DC. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week, and I'll let the Duke band take us home.